Hi listeners, welcome in the brand new podcast called Startup People. We will talk with interesting people here from startup community, and I am over the moon to welcome here as a first guest our favorite Rodrigo de Alvarenga from Brazil. Rodrigo is an excellent speaker, mentor, investor, and much more. But he will tell you by himself. Hey Rodrigo.
Oh, how are you, Teresa? It's a pleasure to be here. Congratulations on your new podcast.
Thank you.
I'm really glad to be here.
I'm happy to hear you, and thank you for accepting an invitation to our podcast. It's really a pleasure.
Well, the pleasure is mine, and you chose like something that is really great. Startup people, that has so many different meanings, and all of them are great. So it's awesome to be here.
And for a fresh start, we always ask our guests to pitch their startup up to 30 seconds. So, do you think, would you dare to pitch yourself in 30 seconds? I know it's hard, but would you dare?
Yes, I would. Let me try.
Okay.
So, my name is Rodrigo de Alvarenga. Basically, I am passionate about complex problems. I'm passionate about people and education. And combining all these three things, I end up, after 21 years working in the financial markets, I end up working with innovation, innovators, and entrepreneurs. And by doing so, I have learned a lot from all the things that I have done together with entrepreneurs. And hopefully, I am getting to a place in which I can give back by helping entrepreneurs to build their companies.
That was perfect pitch. We'll see.
Very challenging, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we can see that you have some more experiences. Okay, and I would start maybe, from the beginning of your career, because I know that you worked in a bank like for so many years. So can you just, start, from the beginning?
Yeah. Well, the beginning actually started much earlier. When I was 13 years old, I started working as a developer in a company in Brazil. At that time, the law allowed, someone to start working with 13 years old. So I started doing this as someone who has taught himself how to develop software. But more or less after 3 years working as a developer, I end up learning that as a developer, I am a very good biker. So it's interesting because I have learned a lot about logic, about all the layers that are in the foundation of computer science and software. I was sure that this particular career was not for me. So I basically was almost 18, so I applied to an university, and I was looking to go for an engineering course, but at the end I needed to keep working. So I had to move from this desire of going for engineering into business. And I found myself there. Um, in order to pay for my studies and also to maintain myself, I started working in a bank in Brazil when I was 18. And from that point on, I spent 21 years working in the financial markets,
Wow.
three different multinational banks, all the areas, all the divisions that you can possibly think of. I have done something. I started in the retail banking, and almost 2 years later, I was working in the international division. I spent time as a trader at the Treasury Department, international division, capital markets, um, international transactions, foreign exchange, later global customers, corporate banking, and middle marketing. Out of these 21 years, almost 12 of which I was leading the corporate banking or the middle market division or both in two different multinational banks as the regional superintendent or the regional director in charge of such divisions.
Wow. What a way.
I was, yeah, I was the youngest director hired by Santander in Brazil.
It's 21
And
years. It's amazing.
Well, actually, it was, of course. I have learned a lot. The foundation of everything that I know about business, I've learned from working in the financial markets and dealing with corporate customers, global customers, and investment banking. But the most interesting thing happened later on. I was kind of frustrated because since I was a little boy, I always liked to build things, build stuff, build whatever, and from that, I had that desire of going for engineering, but I at the time I just couldn't. So in a specific point in my career, I started to become more frustrated with the fact that I was like working the financial markets. Awesome career, but I was not being true to myself in terms of the things that I was doing.
Fulfilled.
So I love people, but I didn't love the job that I have. I like it. It was really well paid, but I didn't love what I was doing. And then this idea of starting a company, start, bothering me. I should start a company. I should start a company. I should start a company. As a very creative person from the financial markets, I end up, launching a company, which was a consulting company focused on strategy and, whatever related to investment banking and finance, nothing creative, right? But in one hand, I had the compliance with the bank that I was working for that prohibited me to do so many things that I launched the company, but was forced to wait until 3 years later when I finally decided to leave the financial markets for good. During this 3 years period, I basically changed it from one bank to another and start preparing myself, like my mindset, and start trying to angel invest in startups, not necessarily software based, in order to better understand how it works. And this almost 3 years period taught me a lot. I started trying to connect to people overseas, US, Silicon Valley, a few other ecosystems in the world, Europe. End up learning so much that instead of just trying to understand how to make money out of investing in startups, I understood and I've learned that we need to build this ecosystem first. There must be an ecosystem to support entrepreneurs, otherwise they're gonna drop dead. At the end, if there are no investors, there are no ecosystem players, there are no accelerators, there are no whatever else, they're gonna have such a huge headache to move forward that chances are they're gonna fail. And even in very mature ecosystems like Silicon Valley, the like mortality rate is really high. So after this 3 years period, still working the financial markets, learning from this angel investing in very early stage startups, like proof of concept stage, I end up learning all these things related to how an ecosystem can provide help to an entrepreneur. What are the players? What sort of resources do we need, like investors, angel investors, VCs, seed funds, etc. I have learned all this. And in 2013, May, I left the financial market and started working as a CEO of my own company. From that point on, a lot of things happen.
Yeah. How was it to, leave the permanent work with sure money and stuff and, found your own company? Like, what was the boundary from leaving the permanent job to found your own company? Do you think the experiences really plays a role, or?
Well, I can attest to the fact that this is basically a leap of faith, because one day I was this guy who was like an executive, regional director, uh, an executive manager, not like middle management, already an executive in an international bank, really well paid, large bonuses, etc. Everybody either need to talk to me, at least in the corporate banking division in the south of Brazil. I was in charge of all this, almost all the south of Brazil. That means, plenty of customers, large corporates, etc. And they all needed to talk to me one way or another, like to ask for credit facilities, to present their companies, etc., etc., etc. So it was Rodrigo from Santander, for example, right? So it's your secretary calls someone and there's a meeting scheduled for you.
Yeah.
Right. The very next day, I was unemployed. No more Rodrigo from Santander or HSBC or Safra or whatever. Rodrigo de Alvarenga from this very not known company that was launched a few years earlier, and with no existing or relevant customers whatsoever. All the money that I had, I started investing into my business. And instead of having like a really large, well-paid salary and bonus every year, I start spending money without having, any income in the very beginning. That is basically a leap of faith.
Yeah.
If someone does not have faith in the fact that whatever you are starting, you're gonna reach success, and it's gonna pay it off later on. If you don't believe that, it's impossible to be an entrepreneur.
That's well said, I think. I think it's the basics. It's the basic, like what you have to have when you're starting your own company or you're doing your own project, that you have to have your faith in it. So yeah,
exactly.
Totally agree.
Faith is the foundation of any enterprise or any entrepreneur. If you don't have faith, you should go for a job, because you're going to be better off than being an entrepreneur. You must have faith, because you're going to start working for free. You're going to be paying people before yourself. You're going to be paying taxes before yourself. You're going to see all your money going into this entity
away
in the future is going to value something, right? But it's all in the future. All the awards reside in the future that you are not living yet. And there, from today until this future, you have to do a lot of things. Like, you have to work like crazy. It's going to be about sweat, tears, and blood. And perhaps you're going to have success. Perhaps you're going to like reach the target, and your company is going to start growing, and you're going to be, in a very good track to growth and scale.
Yeah.
But this is in the future, and you're paying the bill right now.
Exactly.
So this is the hardest lesson I've ever learned in my life. And like, from someone who spent more than 2 decades working for large corporates, large salaries, etc., towards someone without any sort of a salary, any sort of an income. And I try to call people that I already knew from my financial market phase. And there were those who just, well, who is this guy again? Oh, Rodrigo, the former director of Santander. Okay, but is he working in the bank? No. So yeah, forget about him. He can't help me anymore, right? So it's really hard. I just want to state that faith is the foundation. The very next thing you need to have is endurance. Endurance is more like, instead of resilience, resilience is really useful, but endurance is like, it's not you against the world. Endurance is whatever it's gonna come your way, you need to find means to surpass that challenge and move forward.
Mm-hmm.
Resilience is more like, I am like, I still believe in something that it might be wrong and I'm resisting to change. Endurance is like, I'm gonna change, I'm gonna adapt, I'm gonna be flexible, but I'm gonna still fight for what I believe until I get there.
These things, I think, they are very important to all our startups, because they are young people, young guys, and they are starting to do things and starting their own company. And I think what you are saying right now is helping them. Actually, that they need to know from someone like you that they have to have faith and be resilient and stuff like that. So that will definitely help them.
I can, I could speak about this, all the lessons, all the hard lessons, for more than the time we have. But for sure, it is gonna be hard. It is gonna be like, you're gonna feel alone.
Yeah, good things
Most of
are
the
hard
time.
usually.
Yeah, exactly. So, for example, whenever I talk to entrepreneurs that are millennials or youngers, I always tell them, okay, this is going to pose you an extra challenge, which is endurance, resilience, and you need to keep going. You can't quit. If you want to, actually reach success, whatever success means to you, that means you have to keep moving forward. You can't quit. And sometimes, I come from a background in which, education was completely different from nowadays. Nowadays, you have access to a lot of things, right?
Right.
But at the same time, there is this phenomenon called fatigue to decide, because so many things that are interesting, and people are basically suffering from the fact that they don't know exactly what to choose. And sometimes, choosing is not about the option itself, but it's about how much effort are you willing to put into that option until it becomes true.
Exactly. I agree.
So, you know, after faith, the very next thing is, how much effort are you willing to put into what you are choosing?
Yeah. Now you are helping startups, young startups or young entrepreneurs, and you are investor and you are also a mentor, and so you are helping with the startups development. And how do you recognize that the startups is the one, like that the startups will success? How do you recognize it, or what are the symptoms?
Okay, so well, let me say this first. I'll answer. I'll get to your question, but let me just say this first. There is absolutely no magic or crystal ball, no magic to be sure that you are choosing right. So this is not more like experience, some sort of feeling, a gut feeling, than a science yet. Okay, but well, the interesting symptoms that you can you can, if you go back and start assessing all the startups that have reached success, you're going to find some similar factors. And these factors will respond for a lot of what you need in terms of like being successful. Faith is one. You must, as an investor, for example, you must feel that the entrepreneur or the team is really believes in what they're doing. But this belief cannot come from like being naive. It must come from the fact that they know, they understand, they deeply understand the problem they're trying to solve. And that's why they believe, because they believe in the solution they are proposing after knowing very deeply, very intimately the problem they're trying to solve. So whenever I come to an event or whatever, as a judge or as an investor, I try to spot those who actually believe in the solution based on how much they know about the problem. This is one. Then the next important thing, at least for me, is understanding the team dynamics. Is there a team? First question. What is the dynamic of this team in terms of working together? Do they work well together? Are they capable of putting this like through? Can they actually build it? Even if it's like the first version, the first MVP, and later on they might need extra hands, extra human resources, perhaps some experts, but they must be able to build at least the first version, because this is the version that's going to validate the solution, right? If they're on the right track. So unless they are capable of building the first version, if we're talking about early stage startups, right, in the beginning, if they're not capable of pulling this through, that means they are kind of naive, and perhaps they haven't realized they're not ready yet. So, for example, startups that are trying to build a software-based solution to whatever problem, and there's no developers.
Yeah.
Nobody knows how to build a software. That's like a red flag. Another one, AI. AI is like a buzzword. Everybody says that they are building an AI, but I kind of understand what AI is, and that means you must have experts to build an AI. You're not going to build an AI out of applying statistics to a business intelligence spreadsheet. This AI is a very complex thing. You need experts. You need people who have previous experience building machine learning phase, then moving into the AI phase. So, buzzwords won't help you whatsoever to convince people that you are the right startup to receive any investments. What will convince investors is, one, like, do you actually know the problem really well? Okay. Do you have a team around you that can help you build the first version, or do you have the first version up and running? Could you validate with your intended customer? This is two. Then whatever buzzword, just delete from your deck and try to check if you actually understand what you're actually doing, and if you can explain without using buzzwords. Because if you just use buzzwords, that means you don't know what to say, so you're trying to say something that is like allegedly has high value. Artificial intelligence is like something that has high value. So if I say this, I'm going to impress the investors. Investors are not dumb. They're very clever. That's why they have money. That's why they invest in others. So, it's at least in the early stage, I prefer a startup that says to me like, okay, we are, we are proving our concept by doing this spreadsheet, and we are gonna build this like a business intelligence, and if we get there, we're gonna build an AI after that. This is much better than, oh, I'm building an AI. Okay, how many, for example, just let me give you this. My son did something to finish, to graduate, that was actually machine learning. He was dealing with a database compounded by more than 10 million lines over 150 columns. This was the size of his database to work on that. So unless you have data available, you can't build an AI. Because to become intelligent, you must have data processed. So you learn from it, and then you teach your algorithms to learn by themselves. Any buzzwords, either AI or whatever else, I would avoid this unless I can say, hey, I have this PhD here, expert in this. I have this other PhD here, or at least someone with a master degree in machine learning or AI, whatever. If you don't have this kind of things, be careful. Last but not least, the engagement and the commitment they have with the project that they are trying to build, actually. Because, for example, depending on the country you go, here in Brazil, it's quite common that university students work during the day and they study at night. At least 55 to 60% of all university students in Brazil, they do like this. They work during the day and they study at night. So if you're gonna start a startup project, like your third job, first job, it's my day job. Then I have the job of being a student. Now I'm gonna have the third job, which is a startup. If this is your reality, for example, you can't go to ask people for money unless you have something to prove. Like, I have proof that it works. Because otherwise, you're just looking for a salary so you can change your day job to your from your day job to your startup job, or perhaps both at the same time. And no startup is going to be built out of being like, oh, this is my 1 hour per day job. If you want to actually build a startup, you're going to have to engage, you're going to have to dedicate yourself, your team, your efforts, your time. Time is the essence, right? So, Brazil is not the only country that has this kind of situation, but if you want to actually build something that can fly, you need to dedicate yourself. So either you should find means to fund yourself, what we call like family, friends, and fools, the ones that invest in you because they know you, not because of what you're doing. These are the folks that normally will support you during this, like, building phase. Then you have your MVP or your proof of concept. If you can actually prove that it works, there are customers, etc., then it's easier to go for funds. Of course, governments like either like city governments or states or federal government, sometimes they offer grants or some sort of a help. Universities also offer grants, etc. This is the right money to look for if you are like in the situation that you can fund yourself, but you don't have actually something real to show to investors. It's quite difficult to find an investor, a professional investor, willing to take the risk of putting money into you other than into a business.
I think it's connected with the next question I have for you, because I have your recommendation to young entrepreneurs, but you already said that. What is the most important recommendation when the startup is going in front of the investors, and how should the startups behave, or the person or the founder? I mean.
Yeah, that's a great question. I have seen thousands of pitches over time, and first, if you are, there is this gut feeling we have when someone is presenting, focusing only on the money. That means sometimes I have this impression, right? This guy is pitching for money, only for money. They are looking for funds to support their salary so they can dedicate, and then they will have something to show off later on. This is really tough to accomplish. On the other way around, what I miss most of the time is that if you're an early stage founder, you're underfunded for sure. In general, that's true. So what you should convince me first is that you actually really understand the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Because everything you're going to build will depend on how well do you know the problem. What is your validation in terms of making sure you got the problem right. And this is exactly the thing that most of the time startups fail to show. It's tempting to go for the solution, because this is it's much easier to invite someone, hey, come here and do this and show us your ideas, share with us your ideas. How about building a startup out of an idea that you have? When we do this, we are attributing value to the idea itself, not to everything else that you should have done before having an idea. So I am huge fan of, okay, hey, would you like to come here to learn about these problems, or bring your problem? Let's research on that. Let's understand this. Let's talk to those who have the problem. Let's actually try to come up with not one idea, but some different hypotheses that could solve the same problem. Let's somehow try to check them with the customers. And after doing all this, we're going to be ready for any brainstorming in terms of what should be the final solution, the one that we're going to be pursuing. If you are another early stage startup, most of the time, what I see is, founders that fail in doing this task right. They're very good sometimes in presenting a deck that is paper, basically. This is the most and the foremost advice I can offer is this: like, be sure you actually really know the problem, because if you do, you're going to be able to engage in a conversation with your intended investor. You're going to be able to discuss the matter. You're going to be able to convince them you're the right person. Everything else is easy to do, right? Hiring people, hiring developers, marketing, designer, this is easy to do.
But if you don't know, if you don't know the problem, there's, no go.
Yes, I would say, at least for me, this is a no-go, because then you're just guessing. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to be paying your learning curve, and you're going to be guessing until you guess right. So if you want me to fund your early stage startup, the bare minimum you must have is actually knowing the problem well. Because then, instead of guessing, you're going to be, perfecting your hypothesis until it's right. Less time consuming, less money spent in just the learning curve. The money will be properly applied into dealing with the construction of a solution in a more appropriate way, and you're gonna end up being the best guy in town to talk about that problem. That's it. Even if you, for example, I'm gonna build a startup that is gonna solve a health problem, you are not a doctor. That's not exactly a problem, but what you need to do is, okay, let me go there, let me check hospitals, clinics, whatever I'm doing. You should go there and have like this field trip to really understand the dynamics, the problem, the deepness,
Yeah. Validation.
Exactly. But this is a validation that is applied to, let me validate the problem, let me validate those who have the problem, let me validate with them if this is actually a problem. Because what I think is a problem, if I'm not the one suffering from it, that means I might be wrong. So if you do this well, you're going to increase your success rate, or at least the chances of reaching success. You're going to increase this a lot, and it's going to be perceived by any investor, any jury member, based on how well you're going to present.
Yeah,
I'm sure you can, if you start thinking about, you can recall situations in which you have been in a jury member and you have listened to presentations and the numbers were so superficial that you were convinced at the end that that particular president don't know about it. For example, just giving numbers like, oh, my market is X billions. What does that mean? How well do you understand the numbers you're presenting? Why? The whys. So let me summarize all this into one word: why. So if you want to solve a problem, why do you want to solve that particular problem? Why that problem is important? Why someone has such problem? Why the numbers are the numbers that you are presenting? Why? If you start asking why, and you can actually answer your own questions, you're gonna feel much more prepared.
Yeah. Okay. You are a traveler. You travel a lot for work and for, mentoring, investing, and all of what you are doing. And you met a lot of people, for example, here in Czech. So, I'm curious about attitudes, because I think the Brazil attitude is very different from Czech attitude. So how do you see, the differences? Is it harder to found the startup here in Czech or in Brazil? How do you see it?
Wow, that's really interesting to think about.
Yeah.
Because, well, yes, you're absolutely right. I've been traveling around, US, several different ecosystems in US, Canada, several different places in Europe, in the European Union, different places in the Middle East, almost all places in Latin America and Brazil. I have been to Asia as well, but I don't know that much about Asia yet, but I have been there already. But what I can tell you is that cultural aspects vary when you're comparing different countries. Of course, if they're like nearby, they might have some similarities, but such similarities will not necessarily mean the culture aspects will apply in the same way. For example, Brazil is close by to almost all, South American countries, but the culture is absolutely different. Not just the language, but the culture itself is really different from all the other countries in the region. If you go in Europe, for example, you have like so many small countries nearby each other. But at the end, if you start checking the culture, there will be similarities, but there will be also differences.
Yeah, for sure.
I have visited and I have spoken in events, for example, in the Nordics, in Pilsen, in Italy, Portugal, France, different places in the Middle East, Latin America, and US, and in US like Berkeley, and at the same time Miami. So what I have spotted so far is that cultural aspects play a significant role in the very beginning. Why? Because they're gonna basically interfere positively or negatively on how you perceive opportunity. Opportunity is like seeing a problem and, hey, perhaps this could be solved in a different way. This is an opportunity, for example, within our context here, right? So in cultures like Brazil, entrepreneurs tend to be more focused on survival. So we have high rates of entrepreneurship in our history, but almost always focused on survival. That means, people selling hot dogs, this has value. It's helping people to supply for their families, to maintain their families, but is low value added, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we're talking about startups based on software, for example, or hardware, this is high value added. So you can't pursue a high value added startup over your survival. You should do it because there is a clear opportunity out there. Americans have mastered this, like finding opportunities and building upon it, right? And we need to learn from them exactly this. They don't go for journeys if they, in the very beginning, realize that they're pursuing a problem that is not worth solving, or they're, trying to survive. They don't do things to survive. They do things to, become the best guy in town, to become the largest company in the world. They have this huge ambition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and confidence usually.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And confidence shouldn't come from like being sure you're gonna get there. Confidence should come from, I am sure I can do my best.
Yeah, exactly. I think this one, confidence, Czech people, they don't have it. They don't have confidence like this to use it. They don't know how to use it. So
confidence is something that, for completely different reasons, Brazilians lack as well.
Yeah.
And that's exactly my point. So if you, no matter what is the culture you're coming from or the country, no matter how different it is, it's gonna, at least talking about building new companies, it's gonna come to like 2 or 3 things: ambition, confidence, and again, that doesn't mean being sure you're gonna get it right. It means being sure you're gonna do your absolutely best, no matter the results. And the third thing is like global mindset versus local mindset. We live in a global world. That's a fact. So if you are looking for a startup, software-based or hardware-based, and you are just looking to your own hometown or to your own country, you're just wrong. Because either you go for like the largest market in the world, which is a global market, or you're building like what we call like a lifestyle business. You're going to be building a business that's going to support you and your family, perhaps becoming a little bigger than this, and that's it. There is nothing wrong with that. But this is a mindset question. What do you want to accomplish? Do you want to build a company that is going to be as big as possible, no matter if you're having a million customers or a billion customers? But are you moving for as big as possible, or are you moving for I want to survive? That means if I need 10,000 US dollars per month, I'm gonna move until I reach that particular income.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's the difference. Nothing wrong. You can choose whatever you please, but the journey ahead of you is going to be very different.
Mm-hmm.
So combining this global versus local mindset with ambition and confidence is like the gas you need in your car to move forward.
Yeah, totally agree. I just thinking about it so much, and you are right. Okay, and I have the last question because I could talk with you like for next 2 hours, but yeah, we are run of the time. So the last question is, what was your biggest fuck up, or even if it's personal, just, just tell us what you're doing just wrong.
Man, well, actually, I'm gonna share two. Okay,
Okay,
I'll make it fast.
even better.
My biggest fuck up when I was working as a corporate employee was the fact that in the very beginning, when I started working in the financial market, I didn't know what to look for, like a life objective, right? Goals.
Mhm.
So I established as my main goal to become a director in a bank. And I pursued that goal until I got there. But when I got there, I have experimented so many things that made me realize that I was wrong. So I suffered from a success crisis because I realized that, I was wrong in establishing this as my main goal. Now I reached this point, and I discovered so many things that I really don't want to do, or I really don't believe in, and now it's too late. So I have to sort it out in a different way. So that was my biggest fuck up when I was working the corporate world, and derived from like achieving success, which is strange, right? Perhaps in another day we can explore that in more details. After leaving the corporate world, I would say that my biggest fuck up was the fact that I started doing, I started my business and waited like almost 3 years during my learning curve, and then I left the financial markets and dedicated myself entirely to my business. From that point on, I was so eager to learn, so eager to do things, so eager to explore possibilities that I like spent practically almost all my money, and I mean almost all my money literally, doing like 25 MBAs, applied MBAs over a 5 years period, almost not charging anybody for anything. And that was my biggest fuck up because, I did investments as an angel investor. I sponsored events. I sponsored, programs. I have designed things. I have worked as a board member in startups. I have done advisory services. I have done all sorts of things almost for free for 5 years, for almost 5 years. And this was like, as a business goals, it's a totally fuck up because you must have some sort of an income, right? But I was so enchanted with all that that
That's
I
nice.
didn't realize I was practically investing all my net worth into one thing for free. And this is the same as a startup that wants to test their product, even if it's like, this is my proof of concept or my MVP, for free. Because then I'll know for free, everybody wants for free, right?
Sure.
That does not validate your business. And I have learned this the worst way possible. After almost 5 years, I was like, okay, I am almost, with no money whatsoever. And I need to rethink all this because I can't keep moving forward. Otherwise, my family won't have anything to eat soon enough. So I was this close to bankruptcy.
That's
And
interesting.
yes, that was my, a huge fuck up. After realizing this, I sat down and I spent some time strategizing upon everything I've learned. And I was able to rebuild my business in the sense of, okay, let me go like a pro, right? I'm not an amateur anymore. I need to go as a pro. So I changed all this. I kept doing things like not charging, or perhaps like charging travel expenses to speak in events, in some way, like to give back to the ecosystem. But I changed everything else, because otherwise I would be like this guy, very happy guy because I love what I do, broke. So that's why I tell entrepreneurs that, hey, if your startup is going to test for free, perhaps you can do this once or twice. But the point is, if there's nobody paying, chances are that the problem is not big enough for them. So you're going to have a hard time to charge afterwards. You must make sure in the very beginning that the problem is big enough for customers to pay for a solution. That's why you need to learn about the problem.
You can also validate that you see that you have paying customers, so it's worth it. Like your startup is worth it if the people pay it. I think people will pay for something they just want.
Yeah. I've never thought about, okay, there is a free version of Spotify, but I don't want to be bothered by all the ads, etc. So yeah, it's fair to pay for it. It's fair to pay for, if it's something that interests you, it's fair to pay for it. And there is this very good case that you can consider. WhatsApp. Would you pay for WhatsApp? If your answer is no, that means it's really good, but it's not good enough for me to pay for that. If you say like, oh, I would pay $1, that's the size of the, how much it is valued by you. So if it's something that you would pay very little for or nothing, that means, the problem is really not that big. There must be other options you have that are free, so that's why you wouldn't be paying for it.
Rodrigo, I think we are run out of time. So I really, really thank you for being here, for talking to me and, answering my questions. I think it was super interesting. And I'm happy and I'm pleased that you are here with me.
Well, I must say that it's a pleasure to be here. My experience in Pilsen was awesome. And that's because of Lenka, because of you, because of Radna, because of all people that I have met in SIT Port and all the other friends that you have introduced me to. So first of all, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to keep in touch with you and to talk to your audience and all the startup founders in Pilsen and Czech Republic. It's really a pleasure.
I hope, I hope we will see each other when the world will calm down a little bit again in Pilsen.
Me too.
Yeah. And I wish you all the best, and hopefully we'll see each other next time. Thank you for an interview.
Me too. See you soon, and hopefully soon enough.
Yes. Bye, Rodrigo.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, and I will really looking forward to the next chapter and next part of our Startup People. Bye!